I'm Jimmy from Content Snare, and it's a platform for helping agencies get information from clients. So it's like website content, marketing content, assets. Yeah, so people are really bad at using email. I think every agency has a story, or many stories of trying to get information from clients, whether, it's like a website content thing or, even just like send me a logo and a couple of files we can use. I feel like it's always a pain in the butt. You send an email, you might send a Google Doc. If it's email, you get like one thing back per email, and it'll be like a logo that's like 14 pixels high, and you obviously can't use that anywhere. If it's a Google Doc and you're trying to get like a large block of content, it's always a mess. They'll start highlighting things and say, link this text to the about page, please, or like they'll write like instructions within the content that you're trying to use. When clients are using email and documents, it almost always becomes a mess, and that in turn uses so much time of like collating, getting everything together, digging through like 100 emails to get the information you need. Yeah, I feel like most agencies can relate to that.
Why did you decide to solve this?
We had a marketing agency in 2014. It was mostly web design with a touch of marketing. Classic agency when they first started out trying to do everything, but we actually ended up honing in on web design. But it was one of our biggest problems. Interestingly, we've been in software for a long time. We wanted to solve up another problem with software because we love building it. We actually had a completely different product idea. It was in like the briefing space. And I just interviewed about 15 designers or agency owners that I knew locally and had a bunch of meetings and just walked through people's process, start to finish. So what's it like when a client comes on board through to building the project, doing all the things, and then they're out the door, right? I think 14 out of 15, maybe all of them, 15 out of 15, focused on getting content from clients as the biggest problem they had. So that was the point where I was like, screw this other idea. We're going to go with content collection. That's how we ended up building a product around this. It's funny, like now people use it for anything, anytime they want to get information from clients. So it could be onboarding forms, questionnaires, website content, marketing assets. Accountants use our product now to do onboarding and collect tax documents at the end of the year. So yeah, it's been a bit of a funny ride. Well, there's a few pieces, right? So one is automatic reminders, because no one likes chasing clients up. Some people feel bad. They don't want to look like they're constantly hounding clients. So that's like the first piece. It's probably one of our most popular features, even though it's kind of simplistic in my opinion. It's just sending reminders to clients when they haven't finished. But a big piece is like, imagine Content Snare, and you'll see it in a minute, but imagine it's like a form where, like, if you're going to send a type form to someone can fill out lots of information, but in a form, they have to do it all in one go. Whereas Content Snare, they can do a little bit now, leave, come back, do a bit more, kind of like Google Docs. So it's somewhere like between Google Docs and a form. And that's pretty key, because if you've got the form style way of collecting content, you've got constraints. You can say, I only want 100 words, or I want 6 words because this is a headline. I need an image that is this dimensions. So it's not like a document where they can just chuck everything in it. So you've got that like level of constraint, but also the ability for them to just come back and finish it when they've got the chance. So that's kind of, those pieces all together is how Content Snare solves this problem, just by allowing clients to fill it out in their own time, sending automatic reminders. And actually a big piece that a lot of agencies love is the reject feature. So if someone gives you something that's not correct or that you can't use, if you're doing this by email, you have to write another email and say, hey, like the thing you answered halfway down, that won't work because XYZ. Whereas in Content Snare, you just hit reject, you type in a reason why and tell them what you want to do better, or like make that logo bigger or something. And then they just get that message and come and fix just that one item instead of like adding yet another email to the massive thread that you probably already have.
It just sounds like it really helps agencies with their operations, because they don't have to go in and write like custom message to the client. Instead, it's just a system that does it. Should we jump into the product and look at some use cases on what agencies can do?
I'll do a bit of a screen share. So this is where you would have be able to see all the requests you've currently got out with clients. So you can see like all kinds of stuff in here. We've got a landing page one. This is a tax return because I've showed this to an accountant. But yeah, people use it for onboarding. Might want to request information for a marketing campaign. Like you might have a standard questionnaire that before you're going to do an AdWords campaign. And it's like, here's all the stuff we need. It could be things like target audience. It could just be a typical questionnaire, or it might be like, here's the actual structure of the website. Here's the content that we need. I'll just run through like a really quick example. So if we send a request to a new client, these are like our inbuilt requests, and these are your own. So generally these are like a starting point for people, and then they customize them or start from scratch and then create their own templates here. But if we jump down to the design section, and we might just go with like a simple landing page, let's say we get a preview. I'll just leave it as that for now. But this is like a welcome page. We recommend people rewrite this themselves into their own language, and you can put videos and GIFs and all sorts of stuff in here to have a cool experience for your client. We just have a few instructions on how to use Content Snare by default in a video. We recommend people change this though. You can record your own video in a couple of minutes with Loom. Next stage, it's kind of just like our form builder. If you've built any forms before, you'll be pretty familiar with this layout. The main difference is we have a bit of structure to it. So we've got a page, and then we've got a section within the page, right? And this was specifically built for web designers because that's what we built it for in the end. People sometimes ask us why we have sections, and like if they're an accountant, this was because it came from marketing agencies. But in this case, we've only got one page because it's just a landing page with a couple of sections. So we've got the hero, the body, the CTA, whatever, right? And you can use these instructions areas to talk about what's coming up for your client, right? So you might have a screenshot there with like labels saying, hey, these are all the bits of content that we need, and then actually refer to them in here. So, in this case, we've written 1A because we're referencing the label 1A. You don't have to do that. It could just be like a normal form where you're saying, here's the headline, here's the, sub headline, whatever. And then you can put constraints on these, right? So if we made this like a image rather than just a file, then we're able to do things like, we want this to be a minimum of 1,000 pixels wide, and we don't want it to be too big. So we don't, let's say we want a maximum of 2,000 high and, I don't know, let's say 4,000 wide. You can even set aspect ratios and file sizes. Like you'd probably expect from a tool like this, you can set conditions. So that's like a really important feature for being able to show or hide questions based on their previous answers. So you might say like, do you want to showcase your team on this page? And if they say yes, you show the questions related to their team. Most people, I think, watching this have probably used forms before, so I don't think I'm going to go into too much more detail.
The agencies that use Content Snare in the best way, most successful way, what do they do differently?
So the biggest really comes down to two major things. It's breaking it down into bite-sized pieces to reduce overwhelm, which is kind of what happens when you build it out. And I'll show you what the client sees in a minute too, which is a way more stripped down version than this. But yeah, it's breaking it down and then guiding them through the process. So that's like the whole thing with all these instructions we've got everywhere here, and images, and actually telling clients what you need. If you need a headline, we need 6 to 12 words, no fluff. It should say what you do, or, whatever it happens to be. If it's a question about their target audience, give them some prompts of what you kind of want them to think about before they just go ahead and answer. So the way I describe it is every question, think about so we have a question here, like the main headline, right? So these are the instructions. Do they have everything they need up until this point in the request? Do they have everything they need to answer this right the first time? And if you ask that for every single question, that's what the best agencies are doing. Because if they get it right the first time, you're not going to have all this back and forth. And it's a much better experience for them as well. So that's the biggest thing. I'll just quickly step through and show you what the client sees now. So this is like a preview where you can see what it would look like for your client. And you can actually pre-fill some things on this page as well. But then it's as simple as choosing the client. We give it a due date and then a reminder schedule, and you can customize everything about that, like how often the emails go out, what they say. But I'll just go ahead. Actually, I might change this one just so I get the initial email, so I'm not following myself up with all these different emails. But yeah, so now they would get an email that would say, hey, we need some information from you. And if I just open that link in a new window, so they click that link or send that link to someone, they're straight in here. You notice there's no login. You can put a login on it if you want, or you can put a PIN code. But for the most part, especially if this information is going to be public anyway, it's probably not too much of a worry. We do use what's called an unguessable link, so it's very, very unlikely that anyone's just going to randomly pop in here. And now the client can just read what's on screen and do the thing. So we only have one thing on screen at a time for them to do. So it's read this, look at the picture, hit the button. What do we need? A headline, so they can type stuff in. Here's my headline. So that's really all it is from the client's perspective. They could just jump through and do one thing at a time. They leave, they come back, they're still up to the same spot. They can ask questions if necessary. And I kind of spoke about it before. I don't want to go too long here, but like once this is all done, or once the client started filling stuff out, you have the opportunity to approve and reject things. But yeah, that's pretty much a quick summary of it.
So let's say I'm the agency owner and I want to know, hey, like this client, I sent this to them like 2 days ago. Can I see their progress in some way? Does it give me a notification they started this, or how does that look like?
Yeah, so if we look back at the dashboard here, these ones that are like pink and purple mean that the client's done something since the last time we checked. So these white ones, that's the one we just did, right? So that's jumped up to the top because it's waiting on us, essentially. That we say waiting for approval is like the state it enters when there's something to be approved. All these ones here, just nothing's happened since the last time we were here. Like if I went into this now, so I'm looking at this from the client, from your perspective, sorry, not the client's, you get that approve or reject. If I was to approve that, I don't think there's anything else there. So if I jump, that's going to jump down to there. So next time I come in here, I know there's nothing to check. If they were to submit something else, then yeah. So you can optionally get an email as well when your client's filling something out.
I know from our Leadsie clients or our agency's clients that many of these clients don't even have like a computer. They may use a tablet or mobile phone because maybe they're in a restaurant. Do you also support this with Content Snare, that they fill it out from a mobile device?
Yeah, so there's a full mobile UI. I think some things change, obviously, like we're not going to have the comments there all the time. That's like in a pop-out bar. But yeah, otherwise, everything works on mobile. We have people use this for onboarding clients through, like imagine a mortgage broker or something using this. They're sending this to just normal, everyday clients, not businesses. So they often don't have a computer as well. They're filling it, like they might send an SMS. You can send SMS reminders from Content Snare. They click the link in the SMS and just start filling it out. Funnily enough, that you mentioned that, like some people actually sit down with their clients. They'll actually sit down side by side with them and start filling it out, maybe do half of the work or whatever, because then they've still got it all in one place and they can still have the comments and everything for later. So that's kind of an interesting use case that some people do. Again, if the clients don't have a computer, that could work.
So what's the actual impact for agencies? How much does this help them, save them time, or however you measure that?
Yeah, so it is funny. It's hard to measure this because no one tracks how much time this is truly taking them. Usually very close to what the number is in the jar. So we essentially took that strategy with Content Snare and said, like, how much, like, I had to put a number on how much time it saves you a month. What would that be? How much time were you spending on this before you found Content Snare? How much time after? The drop was 71%. The reduction was 71% in the amount of time chasing customers for information. I'll see if I can share this. So it's a contentsnare.cult/survey. But yeah, so we broke it down into like the time physically, like actually chasing clients, like sending emails and communicating, and then how much time getting all the bits and pieces together from all the different emails and documents and whatever to use. And so that you can see that's kind of the drop there. There's the 25 hours down to about 5 a month. Like that was the median. We thought average was a bit cheating because the average was way higher because of a few customers who just save a stupid amount of time. Like they replaced entire staff members with Content Snare. So we used median instead because we thought it was a bit more fair. So pretty big reduction. And if you times it by their hourly rate and then looked at what plan they were on, it was almost a 24x return on investment. So I'm pretty proud of those stats. My favorite one though is 79% had received direct positive feedback from clients.
I love that. I mean, with Leadsie, it's similar where we know our agencies save a lot of time, and not just the agencies, but also the clients. We had one client once commenting on one of our ads, and she said basically because this process was so easy to give access to her agency, she was able to just spend the afternoon with her kids instead of, going back and forth and jumping on a Zoom call. And like these are the stories that show that the experience is just so much better for the client, and that's going to help with retention. It's going to help with like you just off a good start, right? And I think 100%. That's where we both also aligned.
Especially because we're both in the onboarding phase, right? Leadsie and Snare, and that is one of the most critical stages of a project because it's when a person is just starting to work with you. They've like probably put a down payment on, and they're going through this like, have I made the right decision? And if it's a really rubbish process or they don't hear from you for a while, they start questioning that decision. But if it's like immediately a streamlined, awesome process, it looks very good.
Exactly. It sets the tone because, of course, in your first, sales calls, you're going to sell something of how you want to be perceived, but the onboarding makes it real. And so great. I think both Leadsie and Content Snare solved that pretty well. Hopefully, maybe in the future, we'll have also an integration that will bring both together. I think we both want to do that, but it might take a little bit of time to actually build it. But yeah, thank you so much, James, Jimmy, for your time and giving this little overview. I think it's super interesting for our agencies. And how can people reach out to if they have any questions about Content Snare?
First, thanks for having me. It's been awesome. If they want to reach out to me, on Twitter, I'm _Jimmy Rose, James Rose on LinkedIn. I really just one of those names. Otherwise everything's at contentsnare.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a nice evening.
Thanks, mate. You too.